One of the things I've kind of realized about myself doing this is that before I start a podcast, I usually have some sort of snack, right? Like I don't want to get hangry during this broadcast. I don't want to have the sound of my stomach rumbling to, deter you from the information that is coming out of my mouth, right? And I've really gotten into pumpkin seeds recently. I don't know, first of all, I've always been a fan of pumpkin seeds. Around the fall time when you carve pumpkins, whatever, I like to roast them. I hadn't done it in 10 years until last fall. Delicious. All it needs is a little salt, little garlic, pepper, some paprika. You got a great snack. I went into a grocery store and I found that they had just like salted pumpkin seeds. And so I bought a bag. And it's like the perfect for that like salty craving because it's like a potato chip, but without the calories. Yeah, you didn't think you were going to be getting a lesson on food and calories and diet nutrition, did you? Anyway, point being is I just had some pumpkin seeds before I started recording this. And what I've noticed is like after you chew it, it dries out the back of your throat. So if there's a point during this show where I lose my breath or have a scratch in the back of my throat, blame the pumpkin seeds. On that note, I'm sure you guys are really excited to dive into some Purdue talk today. Boiler Banter podcast. I'm your host, Dustin Schutte from Purdue on SI. Follow us at si.com/college/Purdue. You can find me on social media at Schutte Dustin. I've had a lot of good content up there. And look, now that we're past the 4th of July, which, by the way, hope everybody had a great 4th of July and hope that you didn't have any issues with fireworks or any, issues with indulging with one too many adult sodas or anything like that. But, kind of that time between the end of basketball season and the 4th of July, things tend to dry up. Yes, there's always recruiting to talk about on the basketball and football front, but sometimes some of the information, some of the content tends to dry up. Fortunately for Purdue, with summer practices going on with Daniel Jacobson and Omer Mayer, both participating in FIBA U19, that gave us something to kind of converse about here during these dry summer months. Not dry in just terms of content. Well, I shouldn't say dry, hot, because it has not been dry. It's been a very wet summer. But in terms of, sometimes this time of year can get pretty dry. But I've got a list of things that I'm going to kind of touch on today on the basketball side. And the bigger topic I want to get on, and it's not probably going to take very long, is the football scheduling question. And I probably should have hit on this a few days ago or 2 weeks ago when Indiana canceled their series against Virginia, which seems to be becoming the norm for them to cancel some of those big-time matchups. And so I'm going to get almost like a reverse mailbag where I kind of want to hear your thoughts on what Purdue should do in terms of football and in terms of future scheduling. But first, just kind of going to go through some of the housekeeping items on the Purdue basketball side. Probably the most important and the one that fans are going to be interested in the most is Omer Mayer is staying in Europe right now. He's actually going to play for Israel's FIBA U20 team and in the FIBA U20 Eurobasket. So he's sticking around. He played phenomenally in the U19 World Cup. His team finished 7th, which I believe that was the highest Israel has ever finished in that event. And look, that kid at times, I think I've said it before, demonstrated his ability to score in bunches. He has a great release. He's got a great shot. He can he can get buckets from just about anywhere on the court. He can hit deep threes, particularly that game against Cameroon, 33 points. That was an event high for a single game and just kind of took that game over, hit some clutch shots, made some great passes in that game too, especially late down the stretch, finding open teammates, allowing them to hit open shots. The two things that I think, and we can talk, I've talked and written about the positives at length about his game and what he does. He's an excellent ball handler. He has a really good vision. And again, as I said, can shoot from anywhere on the court. The two things that I kind of noticed on the negative side is that there is a tendency, especially against better competition, to over dribble, to try to create his own space, to try just try to do too much, I think. And I think some of that is obviously the fact that Israel doesn't have a ton of talent. They don't have certainly the talent level that Purdue has. And so I think that forced him to create a little bit too much. And he tried to do too much in a lot of time, maybe not a lot of times, but there were a few times where you'd see him over dribble and then there's a steal, there's a turnover, an errant pass, whatever it might have been, an ill-advised shot. You didn't see it frequently, but you saw it enough to be like, okay, he needs to calm down a little bit. And again, when you're surrounded with better players like he's going to be at Purdue, I wonder how much of that is going to be an issue. The other thing that I noticed was at times, I think it was in that game against Cameroon, but I can't remember specifically. But at some point in one or two of the games, Israel was making offense for defense substitutions, and Omer was on the offensive side of that. I'm not saying he's a bad defender. Maybe there's somebody else, because it almost seemed like Israel had an offensive and a defensive lineup in the first place. Maybe I was the only one that noticed that. Maybe that was a 1 or 2 game sample size where they could do that or they felt more comfortable doing that. But it seemed like to me, if Israel needed to stop, if they had a break in the action or a timeout, they would sub out Omer Mayer and they'd bring somebody else in. So can he play the level of defense Purdue's going to need him to play? Again, when you have better players around you, when you have a rim protector in Daniel Jacobson behind you, maybe it's not quite as important. I don't think he's a bad defender. He just may not be the best defender. And so in certain situations, if Purdue needs a stop, is he going to be the one finishing games? That's look, it's July, right? We have no idea. He hasn't really been to campus yet. He hasn't practiced with this team. We don't know what his complete skill set is going to be with this team. We don't even know what his role is going to be. We think we know, but we don't for sure. So quick housekeeping item on him. He will be playing with Israel on Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It's going to be, and again, I got to remember, hopefully I got my times right. Central time is what I'm on, and so for Eastern time, for most of the people probably watching this, it'll be 8:30 a.m. against Spain on Saturday. Then they'll play at 6 a.m. You got to get up early, get your coffee ready. 6 a.m. against Finland on Sunday, and then on Monday they'll play again at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time against Poland. So if you want to catch more of him in action, and remember, final thing on Omer Mayer and FIBA, he missed the final 2 games with a finger injury. It didn't sound too severe. We didn't get a ton of updates on it or specific. We didn't get a lot of details, so I don't have to say that specific word. But he missed those final 2 games due to a finger injury. There was no fracture found, but it was determined that it was in his best interest not to play. They got knocked out in the quarterfinal round. I kind of wonder if it was one of those things where if they were still, had they made it to the semifinal, would he have played? But because they were playing classification games, maybe it's best to just go ahead and rest. I don't know. But it doesn't seem like it's too serious, especially if he's going to stay over there and play for the U20 team. So that was first. The second thing is 5-star forward Cameron Williams has moved his official visit date. Now, he is one of the top players in the 2026 recruiting class. I think he's ranked number 19 by the 24/7 composite rankings. But if you look just specifically at the 24/7 sports rankings, he's considered the number 10 prospect in that class. Originally, he had been scheduled to take the visit in late August, I think maybe the 29th, around that time of the first kickoff for Purdue football. Now he's going to be on campus the 12th through the 14th, which that Saturday, the 13th, is when Purdue is hosting USC, right? And so that should be a really good opportunity for him to get an experience to see, what a Purdue game is like. And obviously, look, football isn't going to be a huge selling point to a basketball recruit. That job's already done. Getting to the Final Four, winning Big Ten championships, turning guys into all Big Ten players, National Player of the Year, like they did Zach Edey, and Braden Smith being one of the top, probably the best point guard in college basketball. Big Ten championships, getting guys into the NBA as they did with Jaden Ivey, Zach Edey, Caleb Swanigan, AJ Hammonds got drafted, Carson Edwards got drafted. That's what stands out to these kids. But you look at Purdue's schedule, they'll play Ball State, Southern Illinois those first 2 weeks. So you're talking about a kid attending a Purdue football game. I assume he's going to attend. I don't know. I'm I'm not in charge of the schedule, nor did I ask for the schedule, but I assume he'll probably make an appearance at Ross-Ade Stadium, at least for a portion of that game. 3:30 kickoff, CBS, and Purdue's going to enter that game 2-0. So if nothing else, even if Purdue didn't stack up well against USC in that game, it's probably going to be a pretty good atmosphere. Right? People are going to be juiced, rejuvenated. It's a big-time opponent that they haven't seen come to West Lafayette, and you're probably going to be 2-0 entering that game. So it could be really cool for him to kind of embrace that atmosphere. But again, a lot of what these kids are appealing, what's going to be, man, I can't talk. I can't blame this on the pumpkin seeds, right? I can't blame me stumbling over my words. I can blame a dry throat or a cough here or there, but I can't blame this. What is going to stand out most to these kids is, again, the Big Ten championships, the Final Four, the opportunity to win a national championship, getting drafted, and again, the chance to play in Mackey Arena, probably the best home court in all of college basketball. Mentioned Carson Edwards a little bit ago. He signed with a new EuroLeague team. He was the top scorer in his league with Bayern Munich and averaging 20.4 points per game. He also averaged 3.3 assists and I think around 2.5 rebounds per game. Got a new opportunity in Italy. So I was a little surprised. And again, I'm not fluent in how this stuff kind of works, but I was a little surprised considering the big year he had. He was first team all EuroLeague, that there wasn't a summer league opportunity for him, that maybe an NBA team that was looking for maybe an explosive scorer didn't take a chance on him. But it's not to say that they can't at some point down the road, but right now he looks like he's going to be really happy in Italy. And again, coming off a really strong season, he was another player who he suffered a back injury, so it cost him the postseason, the playoffs. Missed a couple games there at the end of the year. But, really a really cool opportunity for him to get a chance to play in Italy. Those pumpkin seeds coming back up, right? I knew that they would revisit. Had to get that cough out, so I apologize. And then two other things here that I'll mention is the Purdue football fan day and the Purdue basketball alumni game are both coming out on the same day. They're going to be hosted on the same day. That's going to be Saturday, August 2nd in West Lafayette. The basketball game is going to be held at noon. Gate doors for that are going to open at 11, and it's free to the public. That's going to be obviously at Mackey Arena. The football fan day, it did not say as of this podcast. Now, they may release it, I'm sure, after the fact that I have this podcast out and published. But fan day, the location hasn't been announced. Last year, I believe it was at Mollenkopf. I don't know if it'll be at Mollenkopf or if it'll be at Ross-Ade Stadium, but doors for that, gates for that are going to open at 8 a.m. Practice is going to be then from 8:15 to 10, and then you can do an autograph session and photos and stuff on the field from 10:15 to 11. So that should be a really fun day in West Lafayette. Final thing on the basketball front, again, I'm trying to go through this pretty quick. We'll get to the football question because I'm sure people have a lot to do, and we'll try to keep this episode to 30 minutes or less. But the NCAA met regarding expansion with the NCAA tournament. I think I talked about this on a previous podcast too. The NCAA is looking at going from 68 teams to 6 teams in the near future. And they were thinking about implementing it as soon as the 2026 season. They met in Savannah and Philadelphia. The men met for the men's committee met in Savannah. Women's met in Philadelphia, and basically no verdict. All 3 options are still on the table. So to me, obviously expansion is still a huge possibility. You're still looking at adding 4 to 8 more teams. It's not going to change it drastically, but again, to me, you're just not completely, but you're rewarding mediocrity. So I don't think a lot of what the tournament stands for and how fun it is, I don't think a lot of that is going to change, but it will diminish slightly the regular season because it's not like you're going to reward mid-majors, right? You're trying to get more SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC programs into that field. Maybe 1 or 2 mid-majors benefits from it. I'd be more willing to say, hey, we're going to expand, but we're going to give some of these mid-majors more opportunities as opposed to middle of the road, middle of the pack, Big Ten, SEC, ACC, Big 12, even the Big East programs. So no decision on that was made. It makes it highly unlikely that a change is going to come for the 2026 NCAA tournament. So we'll probably have the 68 team field for at least one more year. And then, 27 is probably, if they do decide to implement a change, or it is recommended that they expand the field, you're probably looking at least 2027. But that was the final verdict on that. They did not make it. They did not reach a decision, did not reach a recommendation. But Dan Gavitt, the senior vice president of basketball with the NCAA, made it pretty clear that all three options are still on the table. So even though people have been hating against this seems to be the least popular type of change that people want in college basketball. So we'll see if the NCAA listens, or if they decide that they're going to implement some sort of change. All right. So the final thing, one more thing. Sorry, got off track here. This is on the volleyball side, but it also involves basketball, is the fact that Purdue this week also announced that the volleyball team is going to head to Mackey for 3 matches this year. They're going to play Illinois, Washington, and Indiana at Mackey Arena. Now, you remember last year Purdue played 2 matches at Mackey Arena, back-to-back Saturdays. 14,876 fans showed up, sellouts. Those were Big Ten conference match records. And I know I talked with Dave Shondell about this. He's very excited. They're very excited. This is another big venue that the volleyball team is adding. And I know it's on the campus, but they're going to Bridgestone Arena to play in the Broadway block party this year. They're going to play Tennessee in that event. So they're playing in Bridgestone Arena, which houses the NHL's Nashville Predators. They're going to go down to Gainbridge Fieldhouse to play Indiana in October. And that is going to, it's the home of the Indiana Pacers, the Indiana Fever, and then 3 matches at Mackey. So a real opportunity to have tens of thousands of people at all these matches. That's really cool thing. It's really cool to see how the volleyball program has grown at Purdue. And then from a Big Ten, it's kind of exploded on a national scale, and volleyball in the Big Ten is so good. If you have the opportunity, if you can get tickets, I would recommend that you go, because I know there was a lot of change this offseason. I know there's a lot of questions about the Boilermakers heading into this season, but Dave Shondell has had a lot of success in his tenure, and the volleyball team should get that kind of support. I think it's going to be win or lose. These are going to be really fun atmospheres, really exciting matches. So be sure that you get your tickets if you can to those. They'll probably sell out quick, just like they did last year. Now I'm going to get to the big ticket item, if you will. And I don't know that I'm going to spend a ton of time talking about this, because I don't have the answers. This is going to be a reverse mailbag. I'm going to pose the question, and then I want you guys to respond, whether, again, that's on social media, at Shooty Dustin, whether that's on YouTube. If you're finding this on the website, on the Purdue on SI website, YouTube page is just Dustin Schutte. Type me in and you'll find Boiler Banter Podcast, or just type Boiler Banter Podcast into that search bar and this will probably pop up. Should Purdue start to scrap some of these Power 4 opponents that they have in their non-conference schedule? I posed this question because, I don't know, a week or two ago, I'm losing track of time in the summer. A week or two ago, Indiana announced that it was canceling its series with Virginia. And you'll remember last year, they canceled their series against Louisville. It's hard for me to criticize that because of what they accomplished last year. They made it through the non-conference schedule unscathed. They played they're going to play a really easy one this year too. I think I'm not even going to, Old Dominion, Indiana State, and Kennesaw State, maybe off the top of my head. I don't cover Indiana exclusively. Obviously, all my attention's focused on Purdue, but I think that's the case. And in the 12-team playoff, and potentially 14 or 16 if that goes to expansion, doesn't matter who you play in the non-conference portion of the schedule, especially if you're in the Big Ten or the SEC. Like, you're already going to play 9 power opponents just by your conference. And more than likely, you're probably going to play at least Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Oregon. You throw Iowa in there. You're going to play some really good football teams. So I think it's easy to sit here and mock Indiana and be like, well, played a really tough schedule, didn't you? Or you're afraid to play the power. But is there a benefit to it? If your goal is to get to the college football playoff, don't you want to rack up as many wins as you possibly can? And aren't you just hurting yourself by scheduling Power 4 opponents, teams that could potentially beat you before your conference season gets started? Like, if Indiana last year had played, I don't even know a good example. I'm just going to throw out a team. If they had played Miami last season and lost that game in 10-2, I don't know that they get into the playoff. But the fact that they played an extra FCS opponent, they played group of 5 teams. I think they played Charlotte. I don't remember their complete schedule, but I think Charlotte was one of those teams. But if you swap out Charlotte for Miami and they lose 10-2, they're probably not in the playoff. But they play Charlotte, they win, they're 11-1, and they get into the playoff. So it's kind of hard to argue with that logic. Now, I'm going to tell you where I stand on this, because over the next 7 or 8 years, here's what Purdue has on the schedule. Obviously, this year, they are going to play Notre Dame. They play Ball State and Southern Illinois, and then they play Notre Dame. So they've got one really tough non-conference game on the schedule for this year. In 27, they'll play North Carolina and Notre Dame. 28, they'll play Wake Forest and Notre Dame. 2030, TCU's on the schedule. 31, they'll play Wake Forest. 33 and 34, they have Ole Miss on the schedule, right? So you're talking about playing at least a minimum of 10 Power 5 opponents in the regular season those years. And look, in 26, they're going to play 11 power. And I'm throwing Notre Dame into that power team mix for anybody that wants to be like, well, technically. Well, Notre Dame's a power conference team. They're just not in a conference. And then maybe that's a discussion for a different day. Wake Forest, so in 26, 27, 28, they're going to play at least 11 Power 5 teams. And now that I've set the table for that, I'm going to tell you what my thought is on this. And maybe this is old school. It probably is. If I'm a season ticket holder, those are the games I want to watch. I don't want to watch Purdue play Southern Illinois every year and win the game 50-0. That's not entertaining to me. Maybe it is if it's the first game of the season, or if you're playing Wake Forest and Notre Dame and you need a win. And, obviously those other 2 games, Wake Forest maybe is a toss-up. Notre Dame in the past has kind of throttled Purdue. Maybe that changes under Barry Odom. We don't really know. So what do you value more? Do you want your team to have a better shot at getting to the college football playoff? Because with this schedule, it's going to be more difficult. Now, it's not impossible, obviously, especially in a 12-team field where you just need one big year to get in. And again, if you go 10-2 with this schedule or 11-1, maybe you do get a spot in. Or do you want to see some of these bigger matchups? I think, again, to me, I always enjoyed going to some of those big-time games, right? And so I'm just curious to know, like, would you rather see Purdue play Ball State, Indiana State, and Ohio every year, and just cruise to 3-0 and then say, all right, now we're ready for Big Ten play? Or do you want to see one of these games? Or is it a combination? Like, do you want to see maybe in 26 Purdue, this is a theoretical. I know I've already said they play Wake Forest and Notre Dame. But let's say 26 they play Wake Forest, Notre Dame, and then you throw in a third, they play Western Illinois, an FCS team. Then the following year, you say, you know what? That was a tough schedule. We're going to reward ourselves or give ourselves a little bit of a more beneficial schedule here. We're going to go out and we're going to schedule Temple, we're going to schedule Arkansas State, and we're going to schedule Indiana State. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle. I don't have the answer. I just know as a fan. Now, I think 11 is too much. I will, and maybe it just sounds like it's crazy to have, but I think that if you have one marquee non-conference game, at least whether it's home or away, that's something to excite you before the non-conference. Like, to me, those 3 games, and even if you look at like Penn State's schedule, I don't have it off the top of my head. I know they play Villanova, but it's just you look at that and you're like, is anybody really getting excited until at least week 4 or 5? And so to me, it adds more excitement throughout the course of the season. It starts earlier. In this case, it works out in Purdue's favor from a conference perspective because they play Ball State, Southern Illinois, and then they'll play USC. So at least there's some sort of momentum like, hey, earlier in the season, hey, we're going to get a quality football game here early in the season. But there may be years where, what happens if Purdue plays 3 of those directional schools and then they have a bye week and then week 5? You're really not invested until week 4 or 5. So I guess it's just a question of preference. I know everybody's goal is to get to the college football playoff. Everybody wants to see their team in the college football playoff. Obviously, covering Purdue would be great to see Purdue get into the college football playoff. At the same time, I also want to see them at least every once in a while play a quality, key non-conference game. So, again, I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Hit me up on social media. Hit me up on YouTube because that's the burning question I have, especially after Indiana continues to cancel some of their high-profile football matchups. That's all I got for you today. Again, I've been Dustin Schutte, the Boiler Banter podcast. Visit us on Purdue Boilermakers on SI.com, YouTube, Dustin Schutte, type it in, and the Boiler Banter podcast will pop up. And another thing I want to say is, again, we've had over, I think now, 15,000 views on YouTube, over 150 subscribers. Thank you so much. I know that this can be a little bit, I don't want to say brutal. It can be a little bit of a tough time. I kind of launched this at a bad time, with summer around and content kind of drying up. But I promise you, when we get into football and volleyball season and then men's and women's basketball, we'll continue to push out content, both written and on the podcast. It's going to be a little bit, a lot of fun. We'll have a plethora of topics, stuff we probably won't get to. If you have any other questions outside of what we talked about, feel free to shoot those my direction. I'm also on Spotify. Boiler Banter podcast, search it in, subscribe. Plenty of ways to get this content, to get this podcast. Final thing I want to mention, and this probably is irrelevant to almost everybody, but I just want to say my goal on this podcast, I'm a big support local guy, right? And a lot of stuff is, even though I'm in St. Louis, a lot of my stuff comes from Indiana. So my goal on this podcast is to wear or showcase only stuff that comes from Indiana. So you'll notice the hat, Sun King Brewery. The shirt is a big, like a beer, Indiana beer stein, right? And obviously, if you are only listening to this, then you can't see what I'm wearing. But my goal is to only wear stuff from local businesses, mostly from Indiana. So if there's a shirt, hat, something you want to see me wear, whatever, let me know. See if I have it or can find it. We'll and there might be some Pacer stuff on here. Technically, that's not local business. It's the NBA or the Colts or whatever. But since they're in Indiana, we'll go ahead and support them too. So appreciate everybody for listening. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again next time on the Boiler Banter podcast.